So after taking a pretty deep dive into the research, I am fully convinced that food affects our mood, including sexual behavior. And that's in terms of both performance and function. So what should you eat to improve your sex life? Hey everyone, welcome back to Inc. Nutrition, where we are all about mind, body, and food. My name is Jack, I'm a registered dietitian, and I am here to help translate the science of nutrition so that you can live a healthier and happier life. Please like, comment, and subscribe for videos every week. All right, let's talk about sex. So there's no denying that certain lifestyle behaviors affect our sex lives. Exercise, sleep, stress, alcohol, smoking, but arguably the biggest modifiable, factor, things that we can change would be food and nutrition. And I think there are really two big categories that nutrition can help with when it comes to sex, and that's sexual performance and sexual function. So performance, I'm really talking about sex drive, stamina, arousal. So there are certain foods and behaviors we can adopt to improve those. And when it comes to sexual function, things like erectile dysfunction and hormonal imbalances, there are some natural nutritional alternatives to pills that we can try to improve these areas. Okay, let's jump right in here. The first category I want to talk about is blood flow. What nutritional strategies can we try to actually increase our blood flow? And the big one is dietary nitrate. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. There are certain foods, certain plant-based foods like beets and leafy greens, especially arugula, that are high in dietary nitrate. When consumed, gets converted to nitric oxide, and that can expand the blood vessels. All right, it acts as a vasodilator, which allows more oxygen to carry through the blood and into the muscles. And increasing your intake of dietary nitrate is associated with helping with erectile dysfunction and even arousal. So beets and greens, eat more of those. Next up, I want to talk about hormones. So there are a lot of sex hormones, but there are two that I think are the most relevant here that I want to highlight. That would be testosterone and oxytocin. Okay, so first up, what not to do. So there is a statistically significant correlation with high intake of processed foods and refined carbohydrates in low total testosterone. All right, so cook more of your own food and try to limit the amount of highly processed foods. That's step number one. Now, there are certain foods that have been shown to possibly increase the amount of testosterone naturally in the body. One is fenugreek, which is a fantastic herb that is used in a lot of Asian cuisine and curries. So you can get that in its raw state or spice and actually cook with it. You can also supplement with it, but consult with your healthcare provider before supplementing with anything, especially herbs. And then also zinc-rich foods would be fantastic because zinc is directly involved with testosterone homeostasis. And maybe the very best source of zinc is oysters. All right, oysters are a super source, and that may be why it is called an aphrodisiac. So that's testosterone. Now I also want to talk about oxytocin. Oxytocin, I don't think gets enough love, and it is the love hormone. All right, it's also very much responsible for feeling aroused. So foods that are high in healthy fat tend to increase natural amounts of oxytocin. So consider nuts, seeds, high quality oils, avocados. All right, those are some of the very best sources that may actually increase oxytocin and improve sexual performance or behavior. All right, we talked about blood flow, talked about hormones. Next up, we have inflammation. And this is really relevant to erectile dysfunction. So there are many reasons that someone can experience erectile dysfunction, and there are some drugs, that may improve symptoms. However, there are also some great natural things to try first. And there are some big population studies that have looked at associations with certain dietary patterns and helping with erectile dysfunction. And the biggest one is an anti-inflammatory diet or a Mediterranean-based diet. All right, so eating overall more plants is a fantastic place to start if you want to try a natural way to help improve erectile dysfunction. So more fruits, more vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes, leafy greens. Plant-based diets can help for many, many reasons for general health, but it does appear that when it comes to erectile dysfunction and overall sexual performance, eating a little bit more plant-based tends to be helpful. And here's an example. In this large study, eating just one additional serving of fruits and vegetables a day decreased the risk for erectile dysfunction by 10%, which is pretty significant. It also had favorable effects on inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and some interleukin proteins. Plants before the pills. Now I want to quickly talk about nutrient status. All right, so deficiencies in vitamin D, vitamin B12, vitamin E, and magnesium are associated with sexual dysfunction and low sex drive. Now there are many reasons that someone may experience a deficiency in one of these vitamins. The big one, obviously, not eating enough and not getting enough from your diet. There also are some medications that can potentially reduce your nutrient status or lead eventually to a deficiency. Some examples of those would be diuretics, proton pump inhibitors, ACE inhibitors, and some antacids. Now, keep in mind, just having a deficiency in one of those vitamins will not necessarily directly lead to sexual dysfunction, but there is a pretty strong association. So I would recommend, of course, like always, eating a nutrient-dense diet, but a high-quality multivitamin that has all of those is something to consider. And finally, let's talk about aphrodisiacs. Are they legit? Do they really work? I think for centuries, people have, looked for the secret to sexual satisfaction, and just about every single ancient civilization talks about some herb that can lead to sexual vitality. But is there some science to this? All right, let's talk about a few. Maybe you've heard of the positive effects of chocolate, figs, asparagus, oysters, also horny goat weed. Yes, that's a real thing that is often talked about. And there's not really a whole lot of science to support the efficacy of those, except for the oysters, right? Because of the zinc that I mentioned earlier in the testosterone. The others, yes, there's some, anecdotes, and there is some reports of some positive sexual behavior and improved performance from having things like chocolate, but it's not consistent and it's not necessarily reliable. However, there are 3 aphrodisiacs that I do like that do have some promising research to support them. Maca, ginseng, and ginkgo biloba. Now, all of these seem to have a positive effect on the smooth muscle relaxation, which can then have a positive enhancing effect on sexual performance. Now, these are, again, associations in the research. They're not causal. Just because you will have this doesn't mean it will directly enhance your sexual experience, but it could. All right. And I also want to point out that there are some contraindications from a medical standpoint from having these herbs if you have certain conditions. So just because I said it, right, don't go having one of these right away. Always consult with your healthcare provider before supplementing with anything. So that's the disclaimer I have today. Both of those things are important to consider. One, everything I said today is not necessarily a direct effect, okay? It's just associations that I've seen in the research, and I want to give you the evidence that is out there. And then next is always consult with your provider. So that is what I have for you today. It was, interesting topic. There's a lot of conversation and debate about certain foods that can enhance, your sex life. And some of it is true. Some of it is not. Some of it is kind of ridiculous. But from what I've told you today, there is some validity, right, to nutrition and improving sexual function and performance. I hope you learned something today. If you have any questions at all, please leave it in the comments below. We can talk about it. But if not, I will see you next time, all right? Have a delicious day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye. And function. So, whoosh. But the 2 I want to highlight, horny goat weed. What a brilliant name. First up, we have best source of zinc would be beets, greens, nuts, fenugreek, maca, eat it all together if you want a good time.